and welcome back to Classic ASMR 1. I think that's what we're called anyway. To check up on it, really. Thank you for joining me again. I can't believe we've now got 132 followers, which, when you think a couple of weeks ago we had 20, so thank you so much. We're actually trying to raise money from YouTube, from ads and stuff, for new theatrical productions. Obviously we need to get 1,000 followers, which seems like an amazing amount, but as I say, I'm so praised. Thank you so much if you are following us, because it was literally 20 just a few weeks ago, and now we're up to 132. I think it is 132. You may have noticed I tried to do a short. I'm not really good at shorts, and my Mont Blanc ball pen ran out, and I did a short where I tried to open this, and as you can see from the state of that, I had to kind of gouge it open, but got there. That in fact is the old black refill, because as you can see, these are royal blue. And I might show you my Mont Blanc pen later on. I do kind of quite like notes. I'm a writer. That's how this all started. And I suppose maybe we should look at ASMR writing utensils. There are various software packages around. Final Draft for film. Scrivener is another one. But I actually really quite like writing with a pen and paper. And I've got a smart pen, a Moleskine smart pen, which originally wasn't so good, but they are better now. So maybe we'll do a little session on that as well if you're interested. Please let me know in the comments. As you can probably tell, we're not particularly tech savvy. But thank you for your comments and support, really. It's quite remarkable. As I mentioned before, I started listening to Whispering ASMR videos when I actually had COVID first time around. I was an early adapter. There are some brilliant ASMR artists around, but I thought we'd do our little contribution, see if it's popular enough, and as I say, ultimately to try and raise some money to make more theatre. It looks like we're going to be touring the UK later on this year, in the autumn or the fall, and it looks like we might be in New York again for Christmas, but more about that later. Let's pop this over here. Mont Blanc refills. Still got a bit of a cold and a cough. Oh, let's move this out of the way. That's an attachment for my microphone. Not sure where it came from or where it should go. I'll have a look later. And then, in fact, this is quite appropriate actually. It's in my Edinburgh Festival Fringe mug from, I think it was 2 years ago. Sorry, it's been used. I've just had a coffee. And I'm a bit of a sucker for sort of promotional things. I had a play on in Stratford upon Avon, where the Royal Shakespeare Theatre is. My version of Shakespeare's Henry V, and it was there for the summer. And I never bothered washing socks. I just go to the gift shop and buy some more William Shakespeare socks. They kind of knew me by my first name over that summer. But anyway, yes, I say sorry about that. I'll wash it up later on when I finish this. Put it over there. And then, of course, this Christmas Carol was the reason that was in New York, in America. And I've told you many times, this is the book that I bought in error, really, at a bookshop in London on the Charing Cross Road. Oh, and thank you, by the way. It was someone in America said £65 is, I can't remember what it was in dollars, but it was quite a lot more. And although it's Christmas stories, it's really, of course, the genius that is Charles Dickens, who, originally from Kent, spent most of his working life in London, and actually wrote wrote A Christmas Carol, the version of which I adapted, which toured UK and Spain and in USA, and I think we'll be doing again this year. But we read this first story, Christmas Stories, from 1876. This book was published. We read The Seven Poor Travellers, which was quite a nice story, and now we're on The Holly Tree. And this is part 2 of The Holly Tree. Excuse me. Which is here. That's my Welsh. My Welsh bookmark. I'll put that to one side as well. That's lovely. I'm probably going to go back there in the spring. Bit of a holiday. Down by the sea. Yeah, we're also doing a special Dylan Thomas walk as well. Dylan Thomas, the Welsh poet, who, well, he was an interesting character, known for being a massive drinker. The truth is, he wasn't that massive a drinker. He was, he actually fell out of a pub that I go to in Soho, and I read an account of he was with a friend, and they'd had a couple of pints, that's all. And as he came out, he saw a publisher walking up the road, and so he decided to become drunk. I think Dylan Thomas was probably aware of his brand, and the idea of the drunken poet was quite popular then, and possibly even now. People often comment on me going to the pub every night, but anyway, that's not where we are. This is the continuation, part 2 of The Holly Tree. I wonder if I should show you this is the Holly Tree photograph. This is the first branch that we're reading at the moment. It's cute, isn't it? So let's continue from where we left off. And if you want to see or listen to, I mean, hopefully this will be relaxing. Please feel free to fall asleep, because that's what I tend to do when I'm listening to whispered and soft-spoken ASMR at night. But you can hear the other version of this somewhere on our channel, but you probably know more about that than I do. So, let's continue. So, they helped me out, and I said to a waiter whose bare head became as white as King Lear's in a single minute, "Oops, what inn is this?" "The Holly Tree, sir," said he. "Upon my word, I believe," said I apologetically to the guard and coachman, "that I must stop here." Now the landlord and the landlady and the hostler and the postboy and all the stable authorities had already asked the coachman, to the wide-eyed interest of all the rest of the establishment, if he meant to go on. The coachman had already replied. Yes, he'd take her through it, meaning by her, the coach, if so be as George would stand by him. George was the guard, and he had already sworn that he would stand by him. So the helpers were already getting their horses out. My declaring myself beaten after this parley was not an announcement without preparation. Indeed, but for the way to the announcement being smoothed by the parley, I more than doubt whether, as an innately bashful man, I should have had the confidence to make it. As it was, it received the approval even of the guard and coachman. Therefore, with many confirmations of my inkling, and many remarks from one bystander to another that the gentleman would go forward by the mail tomorrow, whereas tonight he would only be froze, and where was the good of a gentleman being froze, let alone buried alive, which latter clause was added by a humorous helper as a joke at my expense, and was extremely well received, I saw my portmanteau got out stiff like a frozen body, did the handsome thing by the guard and coachman, wished them good night and a prosperous journey, and, a little ashamed of myself, after all, for leaving them to fight it out alone, followed the landlord, landlady, and waiter of the Holly Inn upstairs. Excuse me again. I thought I had never seen such a large room as that into which they showed me. It had 5 windows with dark red curtains that would have absorbed the light of a general illumination, and there were complications of drapery at the top of the curtains that went wandering about the wall in a most extraordinary manner. I asked for a smaller room, and they told me there was no smaller room. They could screen me in, however, the landlord said. They bought a great old Japanese screen with natives, Japanese I suppose, engaged in a variety of idiotic pursuits all over it, and left me roasting whole before an immense fire. My bedroom was some quarter of a mile off, up a great staircase at the end of a long gallery, and nobody knows what a misery this is to a bashful man who would rather not meet people on the stairs. It was the grimmest room I have ever had the nightmare in, and all the furniture, from the 4 posts of the bed to the 2 old silver candlesticks, were tall, high-shouldered and spindle-waisted. Below, in my sitting room, if I looked around my screen, the wind rushed at me like a mad bull. If I stuck to my armchair, the fire scorched me to the colour of a new brick. The chimney-piece was very high, and there was a bad glass, what I may call a wavy glass, above it, which, when I stood up, just showed me my anterior philological developments, and those never look well in any subject cut short off at the eyebrow. If I stood with my back to the fire, a gloomy vault of darkness above and beyond the screen insisted on being looked at, and in its dim remoteness the drapery of the 10 curtains of the 5 windows went twisting and creeping about like a nest of gigantic worms. I suppose that what I observe in myself must be observed by some other men of similar character in themselves. Therefore, I am emboldened to mention that when I travel, I never arrive at a place but I immediately want to go away for it. Before I had finished my supper of broiled fowl and mulled port, I had impressed upon the waiter in detail my arrangements for departure in the morning. Breakfast and bill at 8, fly at 9, 2 horses, or if needful, even 4. Tired though I was, the night appeared about a week long. In oases of nightmare I thought of Angela, and felt more depressed than ever by the reflection that I was on the shortest road to Gretna Green. What had I to do with Gretna Green? I was not going that way to the devil, but by the American route, I remarked in my bitterness. In the morning I found that it was snowing still, that it had snowed all night, and that I was snowed up. Nothing could get out of that spot on the moor, or could come at it until the road had been cut out by labourers from the market town. When they might cut their way to the holly tree, nobody could tell me. It was now Christmas Eve. I should have had a dismal Christmas time of it anywhere, and consequently that did not so much matter. Still, being snowed up was like dying of frost, a thing I had not bargained for. I felt very lonely, yet I could no more have proposed to the landlord and landlady to admit me to their society, though I should have liked it very much, than I could have asked them to present me with a piece of plate. Here my great secret, the real bashfulness of my character, is to be observed. Like most bashful men, I judge of other people as if they were bashful too. Besides being far too shamefaced to make the proposal myself, I really had a delicate misgiving that it would be in the last degree disconcerting to them. Trying to settle down, therefore, in my solitude, I first of all asked what books there were in the house. The waiter brought me a book of road, 2 or 3 old newspapers, a little songbook terminating in a collection of toasts and sentiments, a little jest book, an old volume of Peregrine Pickle, and the Sentimental Journey. I knew every word of the last 2 already, but I read them through again, then tried to hum all the songs. Auld Lang Syne was among them. went entirely through the jokes, in which I found a fund of melancholy adapted to the state of my mind, proposed all the toasts, enunciated all the sentiments, and mastered the papers. The latter had nothing in them but stock advertisements, a meeting about the country rate and the highway robbery. As I am a greedy reader, I could not make this supply hold out until night. It was exhausted by tea time. Being then entirely cast upon my own resources, I got through an hour in considering what to do next. Ultimately, it came into my head, from which I was anxious by any means to exclude Angela and Edwin, that I would endeavour to recall my experience of inns, and would try how long it lasted me. I stirred the fire, moved my chair a little to one side of the screen, not daring to go far, for I knew the wind was waiting to make a rush at me. I could hear it growling, and began. My first impressions of an inn dated from the nursery. Consequently, I went back to the nursery for a starting point, and found myself at the knee of a sallow woman with a fishy eye, an aquiline nose, and a green gown, whose speciality was a dismal narrative of a landlord by the roadside, whose visitors unaccountably disappeared for many years, until it was discovered that the pursuit of his life had been to convert them into pies. For the better devotion of himself to this branch of industry, he had constructed a secret door behind the head of the bed, and when the visitor, oppressed with pie, had fallen asleep, this wicked landlord would look softly in with a lamp in one hand and a knife in the other, would cut his throat, and would make him into pies, for which purpose he had coppers underneath the trapdoor, always boiling, and rolled out his pastry in the dead of the night. Yet even he was not insensible to the stings of conscience, for he never went to sleep without being heard to mutter, "Too much pepper," which was eventually the cause of his being brought to justice. That reminds me, pausing there, of course, of another famous Fleet Street hairdresser. Anyway, I had no sooner disposed of this criminal than there started up another of the same period, whose profession was originally housebreaking, in the pursuit of which art he had his right ear chopped off one night. I love some of these words. I've never read this before either, by the way, so we're sight reading them together. But anyway, he got his ear chopped off as he was burglarously getting in at a window by a brave and lonely servant maid, whom the aquiline-nosed woman, though not at all answering the description, always mysteriously implied to be herself. After several years, this brave and lovely servant maid was married to the landlord of a country inn, which landlord had this remarkable characteristic, that he always wore a silk nightcap, and would, on any consideration, take it off. At last, one night, when he was fast asleep, the brave and lovely woman lifted up his silk nightcap on the right side, and found that he had no ear there, upon which she sagaciously perceived that he was the clipped housebreaker who had married her with the intention of putting her to death. She immediately heated the poker and terminated his career, for which she was taken to King George upon his throne, and received the compliments of royalty on her great discretion and valour. This same narrator, who had a ghoulish pleasure, I have long been persuaded, in terrifying me to the utmost confines of my reason, had another authentic anecdote within her own experience founded. I now believe upon Raymond and Agnes, or the Bleeding Nun. She said it happened to her brother-in-law, who was immensely rich, which my father was not, and immensely tall, which my father was not, It was always a point with this ghoul to present my dearest relations and friends to my joyful mind under circumstances of disparaging contrast. The brother-in-law was riding once through the forest on a magnificent horse. We had no magnificent horse in our house. Attended by a favourite and valuable Newfoundland dog, we had no dog, when he found himself benighted and came to an inn. A dark woman opened the door, and he asked if he could have a bed there. She answered yes, and put his horse in the stable, and took him into a room where there were two dark men. While he was at supper, a parrot in the room began to talk, saying, "Blood, blood, wipe up the blood." Upon which one of the dark men wrung the parrot's neck, and said he was fond of roasted parrot, and that he meant to have this one for breakfast in the morning. After eating and drinking heartily, the immensely rich, tall brother-in-law went up to bed, but he was rather vexed, because they had shut his dog in the stable, saying that they never allowed dogs in the house. He sat very quiet for more than an hour, thinking and thinking, when, just as his candle was burning out, he heard a scratch at the door. He opened the door, and there was the Newfoundland dog. The dog came softly in, smelt about him, went straight to some straw in the corner, which the dark man had said covered apples, tore the straw away, and disclosed 2 sheets, steeped in blood. Just at that moment, the candle went out, and the brother-in-law, looking through a chink in the door, saw the 2 dark men stealing upstairs, one armed with a dagger that long, about 5 feet, the other carrying a chopper, a sack, and a spade. Having no remembrance of the close of this adventure, I suppose my faculties to have been always so frozen with terror at this stage of it, that the power of listening stagnated within me for some quarter of an hour. How are we doing for time? I might leave it there. That's pretty horrific, isn't it? And if you are drifting off to sleep, I hope you have very sweet dreams. But we'll carry on with this next time. The barbarous stories carried me, sitting there on the holly tree hearth to the roadside inn. Yes, we'll leave that there. I'll put my little Welsh bookmark back in. And we'll close up Charles Dickens. If there's any particular, there's William Shakespeare as well, who I know quite well. So if there's anything particular you'd like me to read or dive into or just have a look at, then please leave, comments below, yeah. I'll leave it there because I am aware of the time. I don't want to take up too much of your time. But thank you so much again if you have subscribed, and if not, I think you can press something on here on this screen. As I say, our ambition is to get to 1,000 subscribers. And then there's a little bit of me thinking, if we do that, maybe the first production that we'll do on YouTube, which means that anyone who's subscribed would be able to watch it. It's kind of an idea I've been working on. So, but for now, thank you so much again for your time and listening. And as usual, I shall quote Charles Dickens from A Christmas Carol and say thank you very, very much, and bless us all, everyone.